Chapter 28, The Cavalry Arrives. The FBI was coming to rescue me. Nevrescu's henchmen were scrambling to get away from the barn. Chaos was everywhere, but I didn't hear a thing. I was so focused on Nevrescu's tattoo and the realization that he was Margaret's birth father. You weren't at the soccer game to see me, I said. You were there to see her. She was amazing in that game, wasn't she? He said. She's amazing in everything she does, I told him. I ran through the timeline in my head, and when we were at the embassy, I wasn't the one you recognized. It was her. She was standing right next to me. You must understand that I'm a bad person, he said, but she is not. She is only good. Nothing can ever connect her to me. That's for her safety. All the pieces started coming together. 12 years ago, you weren't a criminal. You were a student at Georgetown. Is that where you met her mother, her birth mother? My family would not accept the relationship. They would not accept an African-American daughter-in-law, an African-American granddaughter. So I had to make a choice. I had to become this man in exchange for my family looking away from them. I tell you this so you understand how far I will go to protect Margaret. You cannot tell anyone. Well, then you're going to have to help me come up with an explanation as to what we're doing here, I said, because the FBI is going to want to know how we ended up together. Both of us sat there for a moment, breathing heavily, trying to figure out a solution. I knew the FBI would be there any moment. I pictured my caseboard in my mind, and I drew a line through all the dots. I connected all the small pieces, and then I saw it. I know who did it, I exclaimed. I know who stole Woman with a Parasol. It was not me, he said. No, it wasn't, I said. You had nothing to do with it, but that's how I know who did it. We could now hear cars arriving outside the barn. It was only a matter of seconds before the agents burst into the barn. You can help me in a way that will help both of us. Nevrescu lay face down on the ground and put his hands behind his head so there'd be no trouble when the agents entered. What do I do? He asked. You get EEL to force Pavel Novak to return to America, I said, and you tell everybody that Agent Rivers was not the man at the Romanian embassy. Tell them that you saw a man who looked like him, but that it was someone else. That one's a deal breaker. You don't do that, and I'll tell everybody everything, including Margaret. You care about her too much to tell her, he said, but I still agree. The barn door flew open, and a team of federal agents burst in. They wore black riot gear and helmets and had their guns drawn. It was terrifying. In the middle of them all was Agent Rivers. Nicolae Nevrescu, keep your hands behind your head and do not move, he barked as an agent approached Nevrescu and cuffed him behind his back. Rivers walked straight to me. Are you okay? He said. Don't worry, Marcus, I'm fine. He wrapped me in another hug. This is going to have to stop, he said with a nervous laugh. I signed up for art crime because it was supposed to keep me mellow. Yeah, I agreed, but we've got a lot to talk about. After the dust settled, literally, and the scene had been fully secured by the agents, Nicolae, Marcus, and I were all seated around the wooden picnic table, only now it was Nick the Knife whose hands were tied behind his back. You're telling me that it was all a misunderstanding? Rivers asked incredulously after we'd started to fill him in on our version of the events. Not at all, Nicolae said. I asked Gregor to get Florian so that I could help explain that I was innocent but willing to help solve the mystery. Gregor mistook the request and was too forceful in the manner in which he got Florian, but he was never in danger. This is a special boy, and I would not let anything happen to him. He looked at me and added, I will not let anything ever happen to him. I realized that he meant what he was saying. I was important to Margaret. He would never have to hurt her by hurting me. But the important thing is that we solve the mystery. I said, we know who stole woman with a parasol, and Nikolai can help us get Pavel Novak. Of course, Nick said. I have friends in the Czech Republic who owe me a favor. Novak will be on a plane to the United States within 3 days. I guarantee that he'll surrender to the authorities. You know who did it? Rivers asked me. I nodded. Who? I'll tell you when we're alone, but there's one more thing we have to take care of. What's that? Nikolai, do you know this man? I asked as I pointed at Agent Rivers. Did you see him 2 Saturdays ago at the Romanian embassy? Nevrescu gave a performance worthy of an Oscar as he said, I have never seen this man before in my life, and I would testify to that in any court in the land. End of the chapter.